Communication researchers have long been interested in how characteristics of the communicator affect the outcomes of his or her persuasive efforts. If you like to talk politics with friends, you may have noticed that who says something can be as important as what they said. The person who advocates a new policy may be more important than the arguments that support that policy. In this video, I will provide an overview of 4 of the many characteristics of communicators that can affect their effectiveness as persuaders. These factors are credibility, likability, communicator audience similarity, and physical attractiveness. We will begin with credibility, which has been shown by far to be the most important communicator characteristic in persuasion. Credibility can be thought of as believability. I am credible if you find me to be believable on the topic I am covering. Let's define credibility as follows. Credibility is a judgment made by a message recipient concerning the believability of a communicator. Thus, I am credible on this video if you make the judgment that you can believe what I'm saying. In other words, credibility is in the eye of the beholder. It is something you attribute to me. It's not something I possess. It should also be evident then that people can differ in their perceptions of the credibility of a communicator. Some people might conclude that our president is an authority on public affairs. Others might believe he does not know much at all. Another important point is that credibility is topical. Hopefully, you will see me as a believable communicator on the topic of persuasion. However, you are unlikely to think of me as credible on a wide range of other topics. Financial planning, for example, or proper dental hygiene for your dog's spot. Communication researchers generally agree that there are 2 dimensions to credibility. The first thing that makes a person believable is competence, or more accurately, perceived competence. Competence is the belief that the communicator has the knowledge and or personal expertise to speak informatively on the topic. If you think I know what I'm talking about on today's topic, you have attributed competence to me. That increases the chance that you will see me as believable. Perceived competence is not enough for me to be perceived as believable, however. You might think I know what I'm talking about, but you might also think I'm a liar. That would make me unbelievable. Thus, the second dimension of credibility is trustworthiness. Let's define it. Trustworthiness is the belief that the source is inclined to tell the truth as he or she sees it. To summarize, a person is credible to you if that person is believable to you. The person will be seen as believable if you think they speak the truth as they understand it, that's trustworthiness, and know what they're talking about, that's competence. Researchers have identified many factors that people consider when deciding upon the credibility of a person. Time does not allow us to review all of the variables studied to date. I will briefly mention a few of them. For some topics, we might be particularly interested in a person's education, occupation, and experience. Someone speaking on the topic of global warming will be more credible if she has a PhD in climatology, works as a meteorologist, and has years of experience in the field. We're talking about the competence dimension here. Someone who violates my expectations might be seen as especially trustworthy. The coal industry executive who admits that coal is a dirty source of energy is likely to be seen as very trustworthy here in California. We would not expect to hear such a thing from a coal industry spokesperson. A communicator who is perceived as sharing information without any intent to persuade is also likely to be seen as trustworthy. We can get suspicious when we believe someone has an intent to persuade us. The use of evidence to support one's views can improve perceptions of competence because we know the person is informative, but can also enhance trustworthiness because we can see how the person came to his or her conclusions about the issue. Finally, reputation can affect both competence and trustworthiness perceptions. A person might have a reputation for being brilliant or dumb. That's competence. A person might have a reputation for telling the truth or deceiving. That's trustworthiness. The literature on the effects of credibility is huge. I will highlight just 3 effects to illustrate this research. Not surprising, credibility generally enhances persuasion. Persuaders who are believed should be more effective. What's interesting in the literature are the nuances, those factors that shape how credibility affects us and when it most affects us. Think about the issues that get discussed on a daily basis. Chances are you care about very few of them. That's typical. These are the situations in which credibility exerts its strongest impact. You're credible. I don't care one way or the other on this topic, so I accept what you have to say precisely because you are credible. In contrast, when the topic is personally important to us, the credibility of the person has less importance than what the person has to say. It follows that there are situations when we may do less thinking in response to a message because it comes from a credible source. When the issue does not matter, a communicator's credibility may be enough for us to accept what she has to say. No deep thinking is really needed. Again, these are just a few examples from the many documented concerning the effects of credibility and persuasion. This brings us to a second communicator factor that has been studied, liking. Some communicators, however credible, are not very likable. Likewise, people you like a great deal may have no credibility on some issues. Furthermore, you can dislike someone and at the same time see them as being truth-telling experts. The general rule is that like communicators are more effective than disliked communicators. This is a general principle, but I would be remiss if I did not note that there are some classic demonstrations of situations in which a disliked communicator is actually more effective. You can learn more about these situations by taking our Persuasion Theories course. Research shows that credibility trumps liking in most situations. That is, liking is usually less potent than credibility. Liking appears to increase persuasion only in situations in which the audience is not very involved in the issue. If the topic is important to me and affects me personally, what you say will be more important than whether or not I like you. The third communicator factor that we will look at is called attitudinal similarity. Here we are talking about the extent to which a message recipient perceives the communicator to share similar attitudes. We tend to like those who are attitudinally similar to us. Liberal Democrats hang out with liberal Democrats. Conservative Republicans do the same. Sports fans tend to form friendships with other sports fans. When we look for friends, we usually look for people who share our interests. When looking for love, we usually seek someone who shares our values. Birds of a feather flock together. Thus, a communicator who is perceived to be similar to us in their attitudes may be liked more, and that could give the person an advantage in persuasion. However, remember two things. First, we learned that the effects of liking are not that strong. Second, we learned that liking does not matter much on important topics. The same can be said about attitudinal similarity. An attitudinally dissimilar communicator can be more persuasive than an attitudinally similar communicator. This may seem counterintuitive, so let me explain. If someone wants to get us to change our mind on an issue, it may be to their advantage to build common ground, to show us that they are similar to us in their outlook. But what about the situation in which the persuader wants to reinforce our current ways of thinking? The communication task of the persuader is to help you to see that your current way of thinking is correct. Our persuader wants to make your attitude stronger. In this situation, we may find it reassuring that someone who is very different from us in attitudes has looked at the issue and has come to the same conclusion as we have. This brings us to the fourth communicator factor we will examine, physical attractiveness. First things first, each culture does appear to have standards by which beauty is judged. A number of investigations have found that physically attractive communicators are more effective persuaders than their less attractive counterparts. But many studies have found no such effect. Overall, it may be safe to conclude that there might be a small benefit in being physically attractive during persuasion attempts. Allow me one qualification. Physical attractiveness can be a form of evidence for some topics. Fashion comes to mind. An attractive model is a demonstration that the line of clothing can make one look more attractive. To summarize, a persuader's effectiveness is very much influenced by credibility judgments. Other factors such as liking, attitudinal similarity, and physical attractiveness have weaker and less consistent effects.